Hello and welcome to another session of LinkedIn Live. Today we're going to talk about SAP Cloud IAG, the Identity Access Governance solution that runs on the Business Technology Platform. It's basically a GRC product, and I would like to show you today, what is it all about on a high level perspective. What are the services that IAG offers, and then also what are the most common use cases. As always, I have a couple of slides prepared. I will first give a quick introduction about Exciting, who am I and what I do here, and then we'll talk about IAG as always. Couple of housekeeping rules. Shelly James from our team is monitoring the chat on LinkedIn. So if you have any questions, just feel free to type your question into the chat. She tries to answer them on the fly. I won't have the time while I'm talking, so I'll try to do it later. If there's any questions addressed to me directly, I'll try to do it later. All right, so as always, let's get started. What do we have planned for today? Basically, like I said, just a 2-minute introduction about Exciting. What do we do here at Exciting, who we are, and why I'm talking to you. Then I want to talk about IAG. I'm going to talk about what IAG is all about. I'm going to talk about some of the foundations, the basics that we have to know and understand. We'll be talking about the cloud identity services, which IAG is a part of, but that's not all the cloud identity service is about. There's much more. And then we'll look specifically into IAG. We'll talk about the services that IAG offers. We'll see how we can integrate IAG into our landscape. What can we do? How can we use it in combination or against or with access control or without access control. And then we'll try to answer the question that I think a lot of people have today is, if I have IAG, do I still need SAP GRC, SAP Access Control GRC, or what is that I have to do? I hope we will be able to answer the question today. So let's get started. Just a few words about Exciting. Exciting is a software and a services provider in the area of SAP security. We have been around since 2008. We were originally founded in Switzerland. We're still headquartered in Switzerland, as you can tell from my accent. We have a long journey of, we came a long way. We have a lot of solutions and services in the area of access governance and compliance when we talk about risk analysis, SOD, cross-system SOD, rule sets, but also security audit, security monitoring, all that goes into that topic. Security monitoring by itself is a big topic that we're addressing, especially cybersecurity and cyber crime is on the rise. So it's important to have solutions that allow us to protect the SAP system, but not only protect, also to monitor, to have real-time insight into what's going on in our SAP landscape. We have solutions for that. So if you are in the need of security solutions to protect your system, we have very, very neat solutions there. Then we also do a lot of work, and we have a lot of tools and services in the area of authorizations management when it comes to implementing roles and authorizations, whether that's for ECC, for S/4HANA, for Fiori. We have automation tools. We have the ability to implement much more efficiently and more secure at the same time. We have very neat tools when it comes to role testing. Role testing is always a big and cumbersome activity. We have great tools that we call the productive test simulation that basically allows us to test roles and authorizations or changes to roles and authorizations in the background directly in production without negatively impacting the end users. We also have a lot of tools around RFC, interface security. That's a big topic. And then obviously a lot, just in the general roles and authorizations area where we have must tools to, must update, must change, must create, must delete, whether that's, PFCG authorizations, whether that's changes to SU24, whether that's, Fiori components like, building catalogs or, pages, spaces. We have a lot of tools there to do that en masse. The same we also have for organizational data when we talk about derived roles. If you want to automate derived role management, we can do that as well. Last but not least, we also have certain tools in the area of identity access management when it comes to, workflow provisioning, where we have, included risk analysis, with a rule set, what if analysis and so on, as well as user access review, certification of access. That's also part there. Exciting is a SAP Gold partner. We have over 130-ish employees as of today, and we have a very close relationship with SAP, especially when it comes to training, educational content. We do also do a lot of SAP trainings. That's enough about us. I want to talk about the topic, and that's why we are all here. So let's talk about IAG. When it comes to IAG, IAG stands for the Identity Access Governance Solution, which is basically a cloud-based solution. So it's a SaaS solution, software as a service, that runs on the Business Technology Platform, or BTP. And let me just move myself out of the way so you can see it here on the bottom. The SAP BTP, the Business Technology Platform, that's basically the environment IAG runs on. IAG is part of the Cloud Identity Services, or works very closely with the Cloud Identity Services. We commonly refer to them as IAS and IPS. That's the Identity Authentication Service, as well as the Identity Provisioning Service. What do those services do? The IAS, here shown in the middle, is basically identity authentication. That means authentication. That means making sure users can log on to our applications, whether they're on-premise or in the cloud. Not only log on, but also log on securely, meaning using single sign-on, multi-factor authentication, and so on. That's what the IAS is all about. Then we also have the IPS, which is identity provisioning. That's ultimately, as the name says, that's making sure that the identities are provisioned to all those applications, whether they're in the cloud, on-premise, doesn't matter. That's what the identity provisioning service does for us. The IAG, the Cloud Identity Access Governance, which is more like a GRC tool, similar to Access Control, we'll see that here in a minute, uses those two services, the IAS as well as the IPS, for user store, but also for the provisioning. So, whenever we request, let's say, a user or user access in IAG, the provisioning will happen through IPS. We will be using IAS as well for the identity store, the user store. First of all, to log on to IAG itself, because IAG, like Access Control, will have different users that have to access the IAG application, and that authentication step will happen through IAS. So IAS are very important there as well. So those three services work hand in hand in the scenario of IAG, and it's important that we understand those as well. Today we will not be focusing on IAS and IPS. We had different webinars about IAS and IPS. Today we will definitely and truly focus on IAG. Here another picture, very similar, just once again to show you that there's a cloud. So IAS, IPS, and IAG are cloud services. They run on the Business Technology Platform. They're true SaaS applications, software as a service applications. They cover similar features as we have on a premise already. So, for example, for the IAS, we have SAP Single Sign-On. For the IPS, the provisioning service, we have identity management, SAP IDM, or even Access Control. And then for IAG, obviously, we have Access Control as an on-premise service already in place today. So those cloud services extend what we already have on-premise. They can extend. They can also replace to some extent, which we'll see here in a minute, specifically for IAG, and what that means in more detail. IAG itself comes with 5 services. We have 5 different services that the IAG offers. And these are just IAG. We're not talking IAS, IPS. We're really just talking IAG, the Identity Access Governance Solution. IAG offers 5 services. We see them here on a high level. We have access analysis, we have role design, we have access request, we have access certification, and then also privileged access management. I have one slide for each service to show you what the services are about and give you a little bit more detail what they are. For those of you that come from Access Control, I think most of us, when we do GRC and we're GRC consultants, we start with Access Control. So for us Access Control consultants, including myself, the access analysis service is similar to ARA or RAR if you're old school. That's the access risk analysis module from Access Control. Role design, similar to what business role management, BRM, does in Access Control. Access request management, ARM. Access certification, that's more the UAR and SOD risk review portion that we have as a workflow, not necessarily as a module, but more as a workflow within ARM. And then last but not least is the privilege access management, or now it's called PAM. Before it was called EAM, emergency access management, or firefighter. That's basically what this is. So you can see already here on a high level, IAG is very similar to access control. And it is very similar. The approach and the concept, the use cases are very similar. Obviously, it's a totally different solution. It's a cloud-based solution where access control is an on-premise solution. And obviously, there are a lot of differences between access control and IAG. And I want to show you that here as well. So let's first look into the services. Let's look into each service, what we can see here. When we talk about the access analysis service, that's ultimately our rule set. That's SOD scans, that's critical authorization scans. That's based on the rule set, we can do risk analysis. That's what the access analysis service offers us. Important here, and what do I want to point out? Obviously, IAG runs in the cloud, and we will see it later. IAG can connect to on-premise as well as cloud applications. So with IAG, with the access analysis service, I can run risk analysis against an S/4HANA on-premise. I can run a risk analysis against S/4HANA public cloud. I can run a risk analysis against SuccessFactors, Ariba, Analytics Cloud, and so on. And I can also do cross-system analysis, meaning I have a portion of my SOD might be in S/4HANA on-prem, and the other portion is in Ariba, for example. It's a cross-system SOD in a hybrid landscape where we have systems on-premise, systems in the cloud, and they all can talk to each other, and we can analyze it as a whole. The access analysis service, similar to access control, is also integrated in the access request service. So when we're requesting user access or creating a user, the access analysis will also run as part of the workflow. Obviously, we also have a lot of dashboards and insights. So we have, the risk analysis will run. We see the number of risks we have across our landscape. We see what type of risk, whether they're critical, and so on. And then there's also a couple of tools which are very neat. And I will not show them today. We'll have separate sessions, where we do a demo on IAG. But there's neat tools for access refinement, where we can refine access, meaning user has an SOD conflict. Let's look into how can we remediate that issue. Remediation is more important or should be preferred over mitigation. So first of all, we should always try to remediate, get rid of the access risk. And IAG has certain reports that help me during that refinement process, meaning we can look into, we can do simulations. If I remove role A, would the user still have a conflict? Yes or no? What if I remove role B and C? What if I would remove all the roles where there's no usage based on transactional usage, for example? And there's a certain insight that I can do based on reports to optimize and remediate some of those findings. Mitigation obviously is also possible. We have mitigation controls similar to access control, where we can mitigate risks on user level, for example. That is still possible. That's the access analysis service. With the rule set. Rule sets also come standard from SAP. They have rule sets for ECC, for S/4HANA, for SuccessFactors, Ariba, and so on. So standard rule sets are available there as well. Or we can, as always, same as to access control, we can also maintain them, manually, same way as we were able to do before. The role design service, similar to BRM, but when I say similar, not really. So it's the same concept, but with the role design service, what can we do in IAG? In IAG, we also have the access request, where we can request access. And so obviously, we also need the role information. The role information, whether that's a business role, so IAG supports business roles. So we can either provision business roles or technical roles, or even groups. If we're doing the cloud applications, it might not always be a role. It might be a group or a team that we're provisioning, depending on the solution. But that's just, for simplicity reasons, let's just call it a role, a technical entity, or a technical access type of entity in an application. So we can do either business roles. They are only known to IAG, where we can define a business role from individual technical roles from different applications, or we can also maintain or import and then maintain the technical roles itself. What do we need here? It's very simple. The roles are really needed for the provisioning portion. That means we need certain attributes like role owner, who is the role approver, who is the content approver, business process, sub process. That's pretty much it. So very limited, very lean approach from a BRM perspective or a role design perspective. It's really to make sure that the roles are available for provisioning. That's what the role design service does. There's a couple of different ways we can that SAP is giving us tools to create the business roles. So obviously we can create them manually, as we have always done. Or now there's certain tools in IAG that help us to create those business roles. There's ways that we can do that based on usage and what they currently have assigned, proposing business roles. I have tried that many times. Very often it's more gimmicky at the moment. It's a good approach, very interesting approach, but very gimmicky at the moment, not really usable, I would say. It's a great approach. I think going the right direction. But today, the way we're doing it mostly is just manually creating the business roles, similar to access control. And then those roles will be used in the access request service, for provisioning. And obviously, we can provision either business roles, also the technical role directly. Either is possible. Access request service, we already talked a lot about it. Similar to ARM. What do we have here? We have the ability to create access requests. Either I can create it for someone else, or I can create it for myself. So more the self-service approach there. It's obviously an auditable environment, workflow-driven. We can define different workflow steps. We're somewhat limited what we can define. The entire access request service bases on what's called the business rules on the Business Technology Platform, where we can define certain things, how the workflow goes and how the workflow follows a path. But we don't have the flexibility as we have in access control. In access control, for those of you that know access control very well, we have the MSMP, we have the BRF Plus. We can extend that with function modules and so on, classes, different rules. And we have initiator rules, we have the touring rules, routing rules, a lot of different rules and ways we can navigate through the workflow. In IAG, that's much more limited. That means we have the ability to define the initiator rules, so we can say where the workflow goes, to which path. But once it's in that path, it's in that path. There's no detouring rules like we can do in access control. It's a simplified form of what we have available in access control. From an approval step perspective or a stage perspective, we have role owner, we have manager, we have security team. That's what we have at the moment. SAP is working on that to give us more approval steps, but that's what's available as of today. The workflow, as I mentioned, integrated with the access risk service or the risk analysis service, where we can calculate or analyze access risks based on a simulation. So if an assignment would create a risk, we would see that. We could remediate or even mitigate that as part of the workflow. And what's also possible are HR-driven workflows. I will have a separate session on that. That's basically the HR trigger, which is very interesting with success factors, where we can have HR events that then trigger a workflow for automatic provisioning. Very interesting what can be done there, from user creation, user change, user termination. So basically from hire to retire, the entire process can be covered with the HR-driven event based out of success factors directly also in IAG. So that's one thing we'll cover in a separate session, because that's an entire topic by itself. Access certification, ultimately what user access review or the SOD risk review provides to us in access control. What can we do there? We can basically define campaigns. It's called campaigns in IAG, where we can do the periodic access reviews on a user level, for example, to review user access as roles assigned to the user, send that through a workflow, where decisions have to be made, and if roles need to be removed, they will be removed. That entire is workflow driven. You see here I have like in the red process here basically shows a standard process where you even have admin reviews and so on, and then it goes through a workflow. So very similar to what user access review in access control offers us. Last but not least, the privilege access management, or PAM. That's basically the firefighter. So every couple of years, we have to get used to a new name for all the modules or the terminologies we're using. So now when we talk about PAM or PAM, I always call it PAM. That's privilege access management. It's a firefighter, and it's the same capabilities as in access control. The firefighter, as of today, is only available for on-premise ABAP applications. So it's the same approach. We have a launchpad that the user can start in the backend, like let's say on S/4HANA on-prem. They can start it, use a firefighter ID, do firefighter activity, and then IAG will pull the logs, will run through a workflow, review workflow directly in IAG. So very similar to access control. The limitation would only be that we only have available the ID-based firefighter. We don't have the role-based, which most of you probably don't use anyways. But that's the limitation. We can only use the ID-based. And as I said, it's only available for on-premise. We don't have any cloud-based firefighter as of today. That's I think that's in planning, and they're working on trying to figure it out. But there's a couple of hurdles in a way. But I'm pretty sure that's where the journey will lead us, is also to have cloud-based firefighter available. Other than that, very similar to what access control offers with the EAM module. When we talk about IAG, when we talk about the integration scenarios, so what can we do with IAG? IAG, I always say, can be used in two ways. It can either be used in a cloud-driven IAG-only approach, or it can be used in combination with access control. So what does that mean? Let's look at the cloud-driven approach first. I either call it cloud only. If you read some of my blogs, I call it cloud only or IAG only, or a cloud-driven approach. What that means is that the customer will only have IAG and no access control. So basically IAG standalone in combination with IES, IPS, maybe with IDM for non-SAP, for third party, but primarily standalone. That means in IAG, we do all the access governance processes, whether it's risk analysis to show compliance, whether it's the user provisioning, whether it comes from SuccessFactors or just manual requests, manual provisioning. Everything runs directly in IAG, and IAG takes care of the entire landscape, the entire hybrid landscape, meaning cloud as well as on-premise. You can see it here. I have it like with internet and an intranet. So basically with IAG, what would happen? We would have a cloud connector, SAP Cloud Connector, that's basically making the connectivity between the cloud and on-premise, because IAG runs in the cloud, that's in the internet, and our on-premise is behind a firewall on the internet side, and the cloud connector would make that connectivity. And with that, IAG will be able to provision cloud as well as on-premise, all out of, through IPS, directly out of the cloud. That's the cloud-only approach where we only have IAG. On the other side, and this is probably more common nowadays, is what we call the IAG bridge, or a combination of IAG and access control, if you will. But SAP refers to this IAG bridge, and that's the right terminology to use. IAG bridge basically means that we have our access control and we have IAG, and they work together. Why? The reason for that is with access control, the limitation access control is that it's limited to on-premise applications only, with the exception of SuccessFactors. So the only cloud solution, SAP Cloud solution that we can connect to access control is SuccessFactors. And there we can do provisioning, we can do HR trigger. That's all possible directly with SuccessFactors. However, if we have any other solution like Ariba, Concur, S/4HANA Public Cloud, SAC, and so on, we cannot connect that directly to access control. There's no connectors, no connectivity. Then the solution is IAG. That means we're using the IAG bridge. We're setting up access control. We're setting up IAG, and we're connecting that with access control. And that means all our workflows, the users, our end users, when they request access, they will remain in access control. And we have all the capabilities of access control. So we have MSMP, we have BRF+, we have all that available to us still because we're on access control. But now with IAG, we can connect the cloud to access control, meaning we in access control, and I will also have a separate webinar on that. In access control, we basically connect Ariba as we connect another ABAP system. We're just not directly talking to Ariba, we're talking to Ariba through IAG, so the IAG bridge. But from an access control perspective, not a lot of things. I mean, there's configuration and installation needs to happen, but other than that, it's very similar. So the big advantage here is that if you have an access control implementation, and a lot of customers have very extensive and complex access control implementations and invest a lot of money into it and resources, we don't want to lose that. And we don't want to lose the flexibility. So we remain in access control, but we need now, because cloud is becoming more popular and more important. When we have complex hybrid scenarios, we now need the ability to also connect to the cloud. And that's what IAG and IAG Bridge Mode can provide us. That means, for example, the risk analysis runs in IAG, will be sent back to access control. When it comes to provisioning, let's say we have an access request, whether sent from SuccessFactors through an automated provisioning process, or manually requested from an end user, access control will provision the on-premise applications, like our S/4HANA on-prem, ECC, BW, CRM, and so on. And then IAG will take care of the cloud. So if we're requesting a business role that contains an S/4HANA on-prem role and one role for SuccessFactors, access control will provision on-prem, and then IAG will provision SuccessFactors. And that's all then played back into access control, where we have the audit log and all that information available. That's what we call the IAG bridge scenario. And that's great for customers, that have access control today and need to connect to the cloud. So when we talk about IAG and GRC or access control, most of you guys probably call it GRC. What's the better solution? Which solution do I have to use? A lot of customers are asking me that question. IAG is not access control. IAG offers similar capabilities than access control, but it's not a replacement for access control. When I say that, I also mean it potentially can replace an access control. So if the cloud-only solution is workable for you, then obviously you can replace access control with IAG. However, there are certain limitations. IAG, as of today, as I mentioned, is a SaaS solution. It's a software as a service solution. That first of all means I cannot access the code. I cannot change code. So I can only work within the means that SAP allows me to work with. That means the business rules for the workflow, that's all I can do. That's not like, oh, let me do a function module or a custom program. No, what's given to me, that's what's given to me. That means that, that's just as it is today. That means if I have very flexible services and a lot of complex scenarios, I might not be able to do that in IAG. If I'm a very lean, simple, easy customer, I have a couple of systems and I just want to do some provisioning, and I have no, just a manager and role approver is all I need, then for sure IAG will do the job for you. Most customers that I know have very complex implementations on access control. They will not be able to do it. But they have the requirement to go into the cloud, to connect to the cloud. That's when IAG Bridge comes into the picture. So the advantage of using IAG together with Access Control is that we have the best of both worlds. We have the cloud connectivity, we have the cloud performance, meaning like the access risk analysis. It's in a cloud, from my experience, much faster than on-prem because it's a cloud. It's the entire platform that can run it. So we have better performance in the cloud from a risk management perspective. We have the cloud connectivity. That's what IAG offers us. And then Access Control, the on-premise application, offers us the flexibility and the ability to customize and build those complex workflows that we need. So all the individualization can happen with Access Control, and IAG is just like a middleware that allows us the connectivity to the cloud. That's how I see it. Again, there might be customers, and I have customers that go with cloud only, with IAG only, but then we're somewhat limited in what we can do. Might be all you need, then that's perfectly fine. If not, if you have complex processes, then we're probably more looking into a bridge scenario, to have the flexibility and the complexity as you have it today, also for the cloud. And that's, I think, at the moment, the best possible approach is to go with an IAG bridge if you have both. So again, not necessarily replacing one another, can technically and theoretically can, but mostly it's a combination of both that customers will entertain. Perfect. So we already passed half an hour, and I always talk a little bit longer than I'm planning. So I don't have any sessions planned at the moment, but I have a couple of sessions coming up. I want to talk about IAG, the HR-driven provisionings, to see how IAG can receive the requests from SuccessFactors to do then automated provisioning. That's a very interesting topic by itself. I have another session planned, not scheduled yet, but planned, to talk more about the IAG bridge scenario. How does that work? How can we connect Access Control with the bridge? I will show a couple of demos there as well to see how that works. And then many more things will come up as we talk about that. As always, if you want to stay up to date, just follow my newsletter. I have been a little bit lazy lately because I was traveling and I was very busy. I haven't posted any updates yet to the newsletter, but I will in the next couple of days. We'll have more sessions coming up. I'll just announce them through our LinkedIn channels, either on our exciting page or in my personal LinkedIn. So just follow us. Here's my contact details in case you want to reach out. If you have any questions, I think best would be to just contact me on LinkedIn or an email, and I'll try to get back to all of your questions. With that, I thank you very much for your attention. I wish you all a good rest of the year, and then if we don't see each other or don't hear each other before Christmas, I wish you Merry Christmas and then a Happy New Year. It's almost that time of year. Thank you very much, everyone, and have a good rest of your day.